on Saturday night, we see a legendary trilogy come to an end, along with a legendary and iconic career that is of Dustin the Diamond Poirier. He is calling it a career in his home state of Louisiana. It's taking place at the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, and Dustin Poirier is taking on one of his most storied rivals of his illustrious career. Max Blessed Holloway is defending his BMF title that he beat Justin Gaethje for back at UFC 300 April of last year. And although both guys are coming off of a loss, both guys are worthy of this main event spot, and just one of the best rivalries and the perfect matchup for Dustin Poirier's final fight in the UFC. They first fought in 2012. Dustin Poirier submitted Max Holloway, and in that one, that was Max Holloway's first fight in the UFC. They rematched 7 years later in 2019. Dustin Poirier beat Max Holloway for the interim lightweight championship, and he beat him by unanimous decision. That was Max's first fight at lightweight, and now 6 years later, since their second fight, the trilogy will be finished. It stands 2-0, Dustin Poirier, but Max Holloway, just like he entered the last fight as a champion, enters this fight as a champion. Last fight he entered as the featherweight undisputed champion. This time enters as the BMF champion, so a little bit different. But Max Holloway is still the A side, even though this isn't Dustin's hometown. He is the guy in his final fight, and this card was built around Dustin because the UFC doesn't do this a lot. They don't give guys farewells, and when they do give guys farewells, it's not in their hometown. They're not in a main event, so this is a very rare circumstance, but it's fitting for a guy like Dustin Poirier, who has given his all to this game, given his all to the UFC the last 14 plus years, and has had some of the most iconic memories in company history. And when you talk about guys to never win undisputed gold, that conversation starts with Dustin Poirier. He's one of, if not the best fighter in UFC history to never be an undisputed champion. And even though he hasn't been undisputed champion, he is still one of the most accomplished fighters, still one of the most game fighters, and always brings his A game every time he's in the octagon. Even in his last fight in June of 2024, although he got finished by Islam Makhachev, the former lightweight champion, he put up an incredible performance and fight in that one, came up short, but now has an opportunity against one of the best fighters currently in the UFC, although he suffered a knockout in his last loss in Max Holloway. And Dustin has the opportunity to go out like no one, like very few have done before, in his hometown with a victory, with some sort of title on the line. Yes, it's not undisputed and it is the BMF, but still could be a valuable asset to add to his trophy case. That is Dustin Poirier. But this matchup is just fantastic. Although Max Holloway lost the last fight by unanimous decision, and I believe the judges all had it 4-1, I rewatched that fight earlier this week. I thought this was much closer, and I even thought there was a chance that you could give the fight to Max Holloway. That's how well he performed. But from seeing that version of Max Holloway to the version we have seen the past couple years, Max has grown so much, and his game has continued to evolve each time he steps foot in the octagon. He's now 33 years old, and you may say that his best days are behind him, but I think a new version and maybe a new title reign could be in Max Holloway's future in the lightweight division. This is his third fight in lightweight in the UFC, and Max Holloway is about a minus 140 favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook. Dustin Poirier is the underdog in this one. And I'll go with my prediction right here from the top. I got Max Holloway winning this fight. Do I think he could finish him? Yes. Do I think there will be a finish in this fight? No, I think it will be like the last one. I think it will go decision. But I just think Max Holloway's improvement, especially on the defensive end, with his head movement, is elite. With his kind of activity, I think it's a lot stronger. I feel like he's more of a more confident fighter than he was back in 2019, and I think you could tell by how ready he seems, and he looks like his body's in better shape this time than his last lightweight fight. And I think that's telling because Max Holloway has had since October. After he lost to Poirier, Max has set his sights on lightweight. And I think he has said that's going to be his forever home here now in the future. And he looks like a true lightweight. He's grown into that body. And he just seems more prepared. And I think that Max, although you could say this event's all built around Dustin and maybe Max has nothing to lose, I actually think the opposite, because Max Holloway doesn't want to be that guy to go down 3-0 to Dustin Poirier and to lose to Dustin Poirier in his last fight. He doesn't want to be that guy. He already lost 3 fights to Volk. He doesn't want to lose to the same opponent again 3 times in his career. So I think he has a lot riding on this fight. And although that Max and Dustin have been kind of cordial and friendly even, they're both 2 of the best guys we got in this sport. Max, I think when that cage door shuts, I think Max is going to display a edge to himself and that warrior mentality that we saw against him in his last fight at 155 pounds against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. That version of Max Holloway is one of the best fighters in the world still today, and I think we're going to see that come Saturday night. And I just think that Dustin, although he does have power, we've seen him knock out BSD recently, and we see that he still has legit knockout power to put anyone's lights out. And I'm not counting Dustin out by any means and in any way, but I just think that Max Holloway's the better all-around fighter, the better all-around striker, that is. And I think he's going to prove it once again Saturday night. The rest of this card is, it maybe doesn't have this kind of the star power of some of the past ones have overall, but throughout this main card, there's a lot of intriguing fights. Paulo Costa versus Roman Kopylov, an unlikely co-main event, you may say, but I like this top 15 middleweight matchup a ton. I think Paulo Costa, who's nearly a plus 200 underdog in this one, I think he gets back on track. He's the better all-around striker, just as Max is, and I think his power will be the difference. If he can stuff the takedowns early, I really think Paulo Costa will get back to his winning ways. Kevin Holland will make this walk for the 4th time in 2025. He's 2-1 in the year, on a 2-fight win streak. He's starting to find his ways at 170 pounds, that is, and I think he continues that winning streak and pushes that to 3 against Daniel Rodriguez, who I just think is going to be overmatched against Kevin Holland with his long and rangy style. Dan Ige taking on Patricio Pitbull. Pitbull lost his first fight a couple months ago in the UFC. Dan Ige coming off of a stoppage win over Woodson. I got Patricio Pitbull to win this fight, who's also an underdog at almost 2-1 in this one. I think he gets back on track, and although he lost to Yair Rodriguez is still one of the best featherweights in the world, and just because he didn't beat him doesn't mean he still can't beat a top 15 guy. And I think if he wants to have any shot of reaching a contender fight at 145 pounds, Patricio Pitbull's back's against the wall. He needs a victory against Dan Ige, and I think he's an all-around better fighter than Dan Ige, who is still good, but Patricio Pitbull is a former decorated champion, and just because he lost his last fight does not take that away. Michael Johnson, the veteran, who's 15-15 in the UFC, taking on Daniel Zellhuber, who I think Daniel Zellhuber, as though he lost his last fight at Noche UFC months ago, he's still 26 years old, and I think with his 4-inch reach advantage in this matchup, I think that's going to allow him to dictate the pace of this fight, and I think that's going to allow him to finish this fight actually against Michael Johnson, who has been up and down on a 2-fight win streak, but is nearly 40 years old at this point. But overall, UFC 318 in New Orleans, Louisiana is a good card, headlined by Dustin Poirier taking on Max Holloway. Poirier's last fight, will he end it on a high note, or will the Blessed Express once again prove everybody that he can bounce back? unlike anybody, and he still is one of the best fighters in the world. We will see Saturday night at UFC 318. But thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Ryan Wall, and I'll see you next time.